Hello, my name is Trisha. Welcome to my channel, Career Clinic with Trisha. Today we are discussing the issue of office romance and whether or not it has any legal basis, whether or not it can affect one's career positively or negatively, and whether or not it can actually affect the organization positively or negatively, and whether the organization should allow or not allow. So if you are new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified of my next video. With me to discuss this is Mr. Senyor Mejabin. Mr. Mejabin is a labor consultant, a chartered senior HR professional, and a premarital counselor. He's also the author of the book Career Toolkit for Successful Job Hunting and several articles on human resource management, dispute resolution, and corporate governance. We are privileged indeed to have him here. Thank you so much, Mr. Senyor Ejabin, for making time out of your busy schedule to be with us and have this discussion with us. Thank you so much for coming. Reading the letter. Dear Trisha, I'm an HR officer working in one of the top companies in Ghana. I have been working with this company for over 3 years now. Last year, a gentleman joined the company at the sales department. We clicked when he first joined the company and we became friends after the induction period. We have been friends since then. 2 months ago, my friend asked that we started going out or dating and get married in the foreseeable future if I am interested. I like this guy. He's actually my kind of guy, God-fearing, kind-hearted, and very hardworking. I would really like to go out with him, but the challenge is that it is against our company policy to have an amorous relationship at the workplace. And working with the HR department, we are the custodians of the policy, and I can't go against it. Trisha, I'm at a marriageable age, and I think I have found my Mr. Right, but I don't want to lose my job. What should I do? Second one says, Dear Trisha, I will not advise any young lady to get involved in any kind of office romance. This is because it could really affect their career and even future relationships negatively. All right, I was once involved in a guy at the workplace. Although it was illegal or against the policy, we kept it a secret. I was very much in love with him and wanted to be able to date him openly and freely, especially since he was talking about marriage in the nearest future. To make this happen, I resigned from my job, even though I was doing very well there and had great career prospects there. I got another job with a far lower remuneration package after months of searching. My guy continued working at the former workplace and rose up the corporate ladder. After years of dating, the guy kept postponing our engagement and marriage without any good reason. One day, out of the blue, this guy told me he was not, he was in love with someone else and could not marry me. This left me heartbroken. I could no longer focus on my job, and eventually I was dismissed from my job. As I write to you, I'm still searching for a job. If I could turn back the hands of time, I would never have resigned from my job. And office romance has really affected my life and career in the ugliest of ways. Right, so that is that. These are people who are really they want this issue to be addressed. Okay, so I'm sure by the end of this discussion, Senor would have touched on those issues. But Senor, first of all, let's find out when we talk about office romance, what is it? What is office romance?
Okay, so thank you very much, Patricia. Let me say hello to all the participants who have joined us for this discussion. It's exciting for me to always talk about these things. They are very ticklish subject matter in the workplace, and people like to listen to it. So yeah, I also like discussing it. But in essence, office romance is basically any relationship between two colleagues in the workplace who have an objective of involving themselves in some amorous or sexual activity. So office romance does not necessarily lead to sex all the time, but once there are overtures between the two persons with the aim of a possible, sexual or amorous activity, then that is office romance. and it can occur between, a subordinate and a superior, or it can occur between two, colleagues. So generally, that is what office romance is.
Well, thank you so much, Senor. So then it means that if there is no intention of having sex or intention of having any amorous gestures, then we can't term it as office romance.
Then it's friendship.
Then it's friendship.
Then it's what we call a platonic friendship.
Okay.
It is a friendship that is between two colleagues, or a senior colleague and a junior colleague, and it has nothing to do with sex or any amorous activity. So it's often a thin line, because even in Ghana, when you guys are just close, you are just friends, tongues will start wagging, and people will be casting insinuations and teasing that, oh, this is your wife, and so on and so forth, and that is your husband. Have you seen your husband today?
Yeah.
Hey, your boy is not in. So once it does not be within the people, it does not have that kind of objective to become sexual, then it's not office romance. The romance bit of the whole process occurs when there begins to be physical activity, physical attraction that leads to certain actions, with each other. That is where we say that office romance is occurring or has occurred.
Okay, so you made a very interesting and very important distinction between office romance and sexual harassment. Can you please stress that here for us as well?
Yes. So there's a very thin line between office romance and what is termed harassment. Office romance has to do with two consenting adults. Okay. I don't want to go into the details of whether one is married or one is not married, and all of those. Those are moral issues that does not necessarily break any law. It is just, it is based on morality. Okay. So whether one is married or not, all of those nuances, that's a different level. Okay, we can go into that later. But once it is two consenting adults who decide to, have a physical relationship or a sexual relationship, then that is office romance, I've said. Where one party is not amenable or agreeable to the advances of another, then it becomes harassment if the overtures continue. So on Instagram, you mentioned the phrase hit on.
Yes.
When a man hits on a lady or keeps hitting on a lady, that is harassment. Because a man does not necessarily have to hit on a lady severally, for there to be a relationship. Once you show some interest and the person is not interested, you need to know. Hitting on a lady constantly in the workplace constitutes harassment. And that is misconduct. That is unprofessional conduct. And it cannot be condoned. And there's a very thin line between that. And so I say that, ladies or people, workers, should know the difference. Especially ladies who find themselves at the receiving end, need to know, what harassment is and what office romance is, so that when they are being harassed, they know the action to take. And if it is office romance, that also, I'm sure, will come to the point where they have to take the necessary decisions and also face the challenges that come with that.
Wow. Thank you so much for that distinction. So we really need to be very careful whether it's a harassment or not. Once both of us agree to be in the relationship, amorous relationship, then it can't be classified as harassment, but rather office romance. Senor, is there any legal basis for office romance, or what does the labor law say in terms of the office romance we are discussing right now?
Okay, so the labor law is very silent on office romance. It doesn't really say anything about office romance. it says two things though. The first one is that an employer has the right to make, policies, okay, to regulate the employment relationship in the workplace towards, the achievement of the objectives and goals of the organization. And then it also says that, parties in an employment relationship should protect each other's interests. Okay, so those are the two basic, provisions of the law that can apply to a subject matter like office romance. However, because employers have the right to develop policies in the workplace, and office romance is also a workplace policy, then a policy that says that office romance is not allowed becomes regulatory and enforceable as such. And whoever indulges in it then can be sanctioned, and the necessary, penalties, visited on the person. Now, where the policy is silent, then it means it is allowed. And where the policy actually encourages it, then of course it is allowed. But it is important for people to know whether in their workplace office romance is allowed or not. They need to know the policy. In a survey done in the US, it was shown that only about 30%. Yes, I was saying that the data, okay, of research in the US shows that about 30% only about 30% of employees know that there's such a policy as office romance in their workplace. So and that data was published by Forbes magazine, and it quoted the research that was done by volts.com, right? So what I just have to say is that if it is a regulation or a policy in the workplace, then it's applicable to you. If there is no such policy, then it's a free range, and it is allowed in the workplace, so people can go ahead and have that.
Right. So in the instance where the organization does not allow office romance or does not encourage office romance, like the one that we received from our sister, the HR officer, she is in love. She thinks that she's found her Mr. Right, and the man has the qualities that she desires in a husband. And the man says, look, I want to date you and get married to you in the near future. Yet, the company's policy is against office romance. So, like she's asking, what should she do? Aside that, what would be the reason why a company would prohibit office romance, since the law is really silent, or the labor law actually is silent on that?
Okay, so every organization has its own differences, its unique nature. There are certain businesses that office romance may be encouraged. And so, for example, on Insta, I gave an example of the work environment of the air traffic control department of aviation, right?
Yeah.
Now, these people are supposed to be focused all the 8 hours or 12-hour shift that they would be on duty. And things like, amorous relationships in the workplace can actually play tricks on the mind, especially when the relationship is not going well. So under those circumstances, such environment will not encourage things like office romance, because they want their workers to be fully focused when they are working. Again, in an organization where, like a factory floor, where there are rotating machines and you are talking about safety and so on, office people cannot be swayed and distracted by things like love, because such a distraction can lead to a loss of life, a mistake that will lead to an accident that leads to a loss of life. So those environments will not encourage such things. But I know for sure that in the security services, especially in the US, right, they encourage intermarriages between the workers, the security officers, and also the intelligence officers and so on, because of the issue of confidentiality. They want to keep the secrets of the institution and organization within people of the organization. So if they get married, then their home is just part of an extension of the office. So they are able to contain and protect the secrets of the institution. So depending on the workplace, okay, it may be acceptable or not. But like I said, it's important that when a policy is being developed, employees are also engaged so that they know and input into the policy so that it becomes adopted and acceptable to everybody, and employees can also buy into the policy. So basically that is what I can say about that. But for it to be right or wrong, it will depend on the organization. And so boards and their management, together in consultation with the employees, should be able to come up with very tight policies that match the needs and the interests of the workplace. And that is what should hold. And so I cannot just say that it is right or wrong, and organizations that do not encourage it are doing the wrong thing and so on. I think that it will depend on the organization.
Right. Senor, if you were to choose or make a choice, or if I push you to the wall to make a choice, whether you will side with organizations that prohibit workplace romance or side with those that do not prohibit it, which side would you be and why?
Well, you keep pushing me to the wall, but
I know, right?
I will say this, that for me, I am a performance freak. The people who know me and have worked with me know that I am somewhat a perfectionist. When it comes to the workplace, I always say that an organization is not a philanthropic, agency, and so we need to earn our pay. So for environments where we need to focus on making money, I think that we can relegate love to a bit to the background after work, so that when we are working, we can focus on work. I can assure you that the negatives, okay, and the fallouts of workplace romance is more than the positives. And once it affects the institution that feeds us, that gives us financial security, I think that it will be good and in the interest of the organization if workers stay away from such destructive activity, and in the interest of the organization. So that's what I would say. But as I said earlier, I think that love is a very good thing. It's a very sweet thing. I have promised myself that if I get hurt 10 times, I would try to love at an 11th time, knowing very well that possibly I can get hurt, because it is so beautiful and everybody should be able to be given an opportunity to experience it, except that the context is what matters. Yeah. So while we go on to allow ourselves to fall in love in the workplace, it is important to know that it comes with certain risks and certain challenges. And so we can prepare for them and mitigate them. But when the risks and challenges come home to roost, like in the case of our sister who decided to resign in the name of love, and it caught up with her, then we should not really blame anybody, because we have a responsibility to ensure that the decision we take, for example, to love in the workplace, has a risk that we will have to contend with. And that is what I would say. So if it is allowed, people should enjoy it. People should love. People should, go all out, and enjoy, the whole, process of romance. But if it is not allowed, then we need to take, action and make sure that we relegate it to the background and hold our jobs and our careers as priority over love in the workplace.
Yeah, great point you make there. So specifically, what are some of the negative effects, first of all, on the organization and also on the individual's career when they are involved in office romance, or when office romance is allowed at the workplace?
Well, I think that an environment that encourages office romance also ends up encouraging harassment.
Wow.
Because then the environment becomes a free for all and anybody can hit on anybody. So if you are chasing a lady in the workplace and you are saying that, oh, you are in love with her, even though that lady may not be in love, then it becomes an issue of harassment and then brings or raises the risk of lawsuits against organizations. And that is not encouraged. There's also the risk, like I said, of mistakes, accidents. As a dispute resolution professional for since 2005, I can tell you that every relationship has a downside.
Definitely.
Now, so in the workplace, if people are involved in any kind of amorous relationship and they play it out in the workplace and it is allowed, the problem becomes when, for example, the organization is handling some very serious project, like a big project, or rolling out some particular activity or going through a particular challenge that they need all hands on deck for that department. That is the time that this couple would be fighting or having a disagreement, which then would affect, the job. And that is a problem. Again, love can be disruptive and distracting. So if a person is distracted, a lady is hurt and she's at the workplace and she's working around machines, and a guy is hurt, is working around machines and keeps seeing the person who is hurting them, they can be distracted and make a mistake and end up either chopping off their own fingers or causing other people to get accidents and get hurt. So these are the things that normally would be negative. But let me add this also. In the financial sector, for example, employees constitute 40% of the cases of fraud, okay, against the institution, okay. So I've handled situations where a couple have come together to defraud the organization and vanish outside of the country. So under those circumstances, such an organization would never encourage, and so it is also a financial risk. It's also a risk of fraud and other kinds of offenses against the institution, okay, where people will collude to, dupe the institution or steal from the institution or do any other thing. Then it also creates camps, okay, in the institution, and then teamwork becomes difficult because a person would always want to stand for their love, and so if someone else kinds of treats the person badly, if in a management meeting you speak against a particular lady and the boyfriend doesn't like it, then it creates more disputes in the workplace. So it can really create distortions in the dynamics, group dynamics, relationship dynamics in the workplace. And it's so sensitive that it's something that when it's happening, it's difficult to control. So for me, I would normally say that as much as possible, we should avoid it. But if we would allow it, we need to have stringent policies in place and procedures to protect the interests of the organization. And finally, see, office romance and falling in love in the office is a conflict of interest situation in the workplace, because it is normally the interest of the parties against the interest of the institution. So when people are in love, they protect each other, and they will protect each other at all costs against the institution. So it's conflict of interest. If that conflict of interest can be contained and controlled, then I would encourage it because it's a nice thing. But in most cases, it's normally a problem for an institution. So I would normally not encourage outright, office romance.
So now what if the people involved are not in the same department or even the same division?
Yeah. So some organizations, though they allow office romance or they allow, relationships in the office between, colleagues and also between workers, they have stringent rules that reduces the effect of the conflict of interest. So for example, they will say that the people cannot be in the same region if it is a nationwide organization. So for very large organizations, it can be tolerated but controlled, right? But in very small organizations like consulting firms with only 15 people, where they work from one space and so on, you cannot be encouraging this kind of things, because it definitely would come to, cause the confusion in the workplace. So yeah, assuming that somebody goes out with a female colleague and it doesn't work, not hit on, maybe approach another one and goes out, then the two now start becoming rivals. And rivalry in the workplace is very tricky. So when it's a small organization, I wouldn't encourage it. If it's a big organization and it can be controlled, yes, it can be encouraged, because hey, love is a good thing.
Love is beautiful. So I'm asking, is there any positive side to workplace romance at all? Or is all negative?
Oh, there's a positive side. I mean, when it's going well, it increases productivity and people are at their A game. They have high spirits. They are encouraged by the presence of their lovers, and they seem to want to be their best. They don't want to embarrass themselves in front of their lovers. So if they have to prepare for a presentation, or they're doing a presentation, their palms sweat, they shiver a bit, but at the end of the day, they make sure that they get it right. So it's motivational, and if it works, it really impacts positively on group dynamics. Everybody, very good, well-behaved couples in the workplace, everybody knows they are going out, they become a kind of role models for others, and an example of what good love looks like in the workplace. It keeps the workplace very light and stress-free and all that. But it starts going down south when they start fighting and all the negatives of relationships start coming up. And then, it takes a nosedive, and then there's a problem, So it does have good sides, but like I said, the bad sides normally tend to be a lot more than the good sides.
That's very insightful. I have heard stories where even as group of companies, they are not allowed to have relationship with other groups. So for example, it's a group of companies, maybe one is in insurance, banking, maybe cleaning services, but they're not supposed to even have any relationship at all within the group. Would you say that is fair?
Well, I would hesitate to judge until I know what the institution does and what policies are in place. Because, like I said, there may be good reasons why an organization would take such a policy. However, I think that, workplace or policies on workplace romance need to be fair and useful. Okay, we should try and encourage and bring out the good sides of our employees, especially when it helps, promote a very good work culture, as well as increases productivity. But just because of somebody's whim, decide that, okay, nobody can have this kind of relationship in this workplace, whether it affects the work or not, whether the activities or the work of the institution is not hampered or not, just because of somebody's moral conviction, they just impose this on everyone. I think that would be quite unfair. So for me, I think it has to be a decision that is taken by consensus. The policy must be developed using the principles of inclusion, so that when it is actually enforced, it's easy and it is also encompassing and involving, and then it has the buy-in of workers, and that is when it becomes a very successful policy. you know.
That's
So
interesting.
I wouldn't say it is right or wrong, but
Okay.
I would then want to know a bit more about the institution to be able to judge as a workplace practitioner whether really that is a bit high-handed or not. Yeah.
Right. Like somebody said when we were having the Insta discussion that the boss was hitting on her, and then she stood her ground, and she's in HR, and then she realizes that the boss is hitting another person, and as an HR person, she's lost as to
My Zoom meeting has resumed, so can you?
what to do to address the situation. What would you advise, Senor, for the benefit of those who are not with us on Insta?
Yeah, you see, the truth of the matter is that I've said that there's a thin line between office romance and harassment. Now, hitting on a female worker is unprofessional, is unacceptable, it is misconduct. So it should not be allowed. So there also have to be grievance policies that ensure, and when I'm drafting workplace policies and I come to harassment, I draft a separate policy for harassment, especially dealing with complaints. I draft a separate complaint handling system for harassment and abuse, which is separate from grievance process, but they are the same. So if there's such a complaint mechanism, the employee needs to use that. But the employee needs to be able to know whether that organization supports and condones this kind of behavior, because I know organizations that actually protect people who do that. And sometimes it's even a management clique where, for example, national service people come into the organization and then they sit and share. They share and say that this is mine, that is mine, that is mine, so and don't go. And then it's something that they encourage. Under those circumstances, when you speak out, you become the lone voice and you can be brutally, dealt with, but there is still the opportunity for an employee who feels harassed to ensure that they get either written evidence through text or video evidence, electronic evidence that shows that truly that is happening to them. They can talk to a senior person who is a lady. If it's a lady who is suffering this harassment, they can speak to the senior person who is a lady and seek advice as to how best they should go about it. And then, otherwise, with this kind of information, they can either walk away and sue the organization and also sue the individual who was who was perpetrating the harassment, or they find another job, and then when they are in employment, they can take the former employer on. In all of these things, we need to know the difference between harassment and office romance. If we know, then we can deal with harassment. So any policy must be able to clearly create a distinction between the two, so that an environment that allows romance does not become a free-for-all harassment galore. It's not acceptable and it should not be encouraged.
Well, thank you so much. At this juncture, if you have any question, you can draw attention to it by either raising your hand or just go ahead, unmute yourself, and then ask your question. So whilst you're waiting for questions, Senor, what if the person, at the workplace, most of the time, the people at the receiving end of this act of sexual harassment mostly are the ladies. And sometimes some of the gentlemen say that is the way the people dress, is the way the ladies dress and come to work. That is why they are also being harassed. So what would you say about that?
Okay, so every workplace must have a dress code,
okay,
of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. But I'm one of those in the school of thought, who belong to the school of thought that professionalism is also about self-control. So, scientists have shown, and data has shown, that the more people spend time together, the more attracted they are to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue of professionalism and self-control is really huge in this. And for anyone to say they are professional, then how a lady dresses should not lead you to justify the issue of harassment. In fact, it's a weak condition. It's an inexcusable situation, and no serious gentleman should allow themselves to go through that. Harassment is disrespectful to women. It is gender bias. It is short of evil, and it should not be perpetrated, because men who do that should just imagine another man hitting on them like that,
Mm-hmm.
and see how it will feel like. So in the workplace, it is not and should not be acceptable at all. And the excuse of the person has nice legs and thighs, and the person wears short things all the time, and so that is why I'm tempted to do this. Professionalism means self-control, and so people should control themselves in the workplace. And there must be strict rules against some of these things, so that perpetrators are seriously dealt with as an example to others. Well, in the workplace, we can keep focus on the work of the organization and continue doing. But to be fair, it is on the part of HR people. It is also inexcusable and very incompetent for HR not to enforce the rules of dress codes in the workplace and allow people to just dress anyhow to work, so that they become a distraction to other people. I'm telling you, sometimes how some ladies dress is still a problem to other ladies.
Yes.
And that is just a distraction that nobody needs in the workplace. And in the workplace, we need to focus and work and make some money and earn our salaries. And so if there is a loose environment like that, then these things would happen. But even if it does, it's not an excuse. So there must be a balance. We must make sure that people dress well, people dress professionally, and then when they do not dress professionally, we need to bring them to and ensure. Okay, so there must be a balance to make sure that the interest of the organization is protected, and no one person becomes a distraction to the organization. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Please, if you have any question, kindly, right, Helena, you have a question. Okay, please go ahead and ask your question. Just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Yes. So, good evening or good afternoon. Yeah. What's your take on extramarital affairs in the workplace? But certain workplaces, they just say that it's their private life and they can't do anything about it.
Okay, good. So, this is a very dicey. So, I'm one of the workplace practitioners who do not take religion to the workplace.
Okay.
Now, according to our laws, extramarital affairs are not unlawful. They are affairs between two consenting adults. It is when we start bringing religion and morality that creates, the problem. So the policy should be able to distinguish and make it unacceptable for extramarital affairs in the workplace, even if workplace romance is allowed. Then it will become a regulation that has a penalty and a sanction if it is flouted. Indeed, if you ask of my personal opinion, extramarital affairs bring a lot of societal problems. So it should not be encouraged anywhere, including the workplace. But in the workplace, because religion is not something that underpins performance and any other thing in the workplace. Any workplace policy must spell out specifically what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. On Insta, I mentioned that certain things might be unlawful, but they may not be useful. Okay, so the organization needs to be able to distinguish between things that, and I also said that laws are applicable everywhere, but policies are only applicable within the institution. So within that institution, the policy must clearly spell out what is acceptable and what is not. And for me, extramarital affairs under normal circumstances should not be acceptable. And so a policy must spell that out, because it creates too many societal problems. And I don't think that an organization being part of a society must encourage that kind of thing. And when it comes to Christianity, okay, we do not endorse extramarital affairs. And so when it comes to that, of course, it's different from the workplace. So the workplace rules must really spell this out, because it is not unlawful as a country for anyone to partake in extramarital affairs. Okay.
Thank you so much, Senior. So if the organization comes out with a policy that strictly prohibits that, then that is good to go. Is that the case?
Exactly. So then that becomes a regulation. And so if you do it, then you face the consequences.
Exactly.
And that one, it becomes very easy. An immediate sack is a very easy thing to do when you know that, you know, people don't want to work. They want to romance themselves in the workplace. And when already they have, you know, legal partners, then it's easy to send them off, you know, to go and, you know, continue what they are doing somewhere else, but not in the institution.
Not in the institution. Thank you so much, Senor. So, Senor, then how would you advise our HR sister who says she doesn't know what to do because she doesn't want to lose her job, and she also thinks that she has found her Mr. Right? What advice would you give her? What should she do?
Okay, so in my experience as a marriage counselor, love is as good as it lasts.
Wow.
Okay, and everybody has the capacity to love again. You know, the heart that God gave us is very deep, and it can soak a lot of pressure. So today you may have a heartbreak, and tomorrow another person will come and sweep you off your feet. So all I'm trying to say is that people can love again. You can love again all the time. But under the circumstances of the unemployment situation in our country presently, people find it, look, the average time for a graduate to get a good job today is between 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years. If the love does not work, which you have the capacity to love again, right? It is more serious if you sacrifice your career and you take a nosedive and possibly you are unable to ever recover. Because remember, in careers, often you have a few shots at career success. Career success comes in very few opportunities that you grab. So if those opportunities come and you choose love over that and you never get it again, then you are in trouble. So if we want to focus on our careers, like she says, I can't lose my job, then I'll say that choose your job over love. As for love, it will find its level. I can assure everyone, love will always find its level. It's like water. It will settle, it will find its level. But currently, jobs are not that easy to find. If she's sure that she's in a job that is scarce, that she can get jobs anyhow and just walk into another job anytime, then she can gamble with that. But under the circumstances, I'll never tell any young person who is pursuing a career to choose love over. Look, no guy is worth it, no lady is worth it. Your career is number one. It gives you security. It defines your life. It defines your status in society, you know. And so you cannot sacrifice love over that. And finally, see, love is not marriage. Okay. Let me redefine. Not love. Relationships is not marriage. So if you love in a relationship, it's a risk because it is not absolute that it will end in marriage. So you cannot be trading it for core things, priorities in your life. So you need to always keep a balance and make sure that even though I can love, the context is important. We need to do first things first, and love will always find its place. Indeed, if you choose your priorities, whoever claims they love you will settle for whatever you decide to do. So that is what I'll say. She needs to keep her job, forget about this gentleman for now. And if the gentleman really loves her, then the gentleman should look for another job. And yeah. And
most of the time, the ladies are the ones that leave. So, for example, with this our sister who is advising ladies to avoid that like a plague, not to go into it at all because of what she has experienced. She resigned, and now the boy or the gentleman left her, and now she's really suffering. So
yeah, because it is ladies who are normally, in dreamland and doing, going to heaven for love. You understand? I mean, while women are loving, with their hearts, men we love with the head. Now that the roles are switching and mixing, ladies need to start learning, and some of us are available to take people through various processes and tools to help them to be able to love with their head, okay, rather than loving with the heart. It is good, it is sweet to love, but hey, love has risks, and when they come home to roost, they can mess you up. So you cannot take a chance with love. You need to be sure what you are doing when you are dabbling in things of love.
Thank you so much, Senor. If there's any question, please, if you are ready to ask a question, just unmute yourself and ask. We have 7 minutes to go. Senor, what if somebody is an HR professional here listening to us or watching us, they don't have any workplace policy against office romance, but from what you have said, they think that it's happening anyway and it's affecting the organization negatively. What processes must they go through to ensure that they have the policy in place to ensure that it guides the relationship at the workplace?
The first thing is, as HR practitioners, is to engage their superiors. So you engage your CEO first. What do you think about this? Okay, maybe cite a few examples of what has happened in the organization that needs to be curtailed. Then the CEO must be encouraged to have a chat with the board to see what their minds are about it, vis-a-vis the operations of the organization. Then at various fora of the institution, the matter should also be raised, and employees should be encouraged to bring in their thoughts. All of these collated would point to a direction which then can inform the policy. So when the policy is done, it is shared with all the stakeholders again, but of course not.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So the policy, when it's drafted, is shared with the board and the executives and management, and then it is adopted. So by the time it is adopted, it becomes, an acceptable document for all, which is inclusive in nature. So those are the processes that must be used to, and every policy must go through that same thing. Then the other thing I'll say is that such policies must also be bounced off, workplace experts, so that they go through and make sure that it has all the ingredients to be able to be sustainable. But sometimes you develop a shallow policy and then it doesn't solve any problem. Even though the policy is there, nothing happens, and it doesn't resolve the problems and challenges that it is, drafted or developed to resolve. So it is good to involve a workplace expert in, reviewing some of this, and then for a few CDs, you can end up saving, somebody's life and it is worth it to ensure that you have a tight policy for
Yes.
workplace romance.
Thank you. Senior is a workplace expert. So if you have any, or you want to have a policy like that, before we go, he'll give his number out so that you can contact him. But Betty has a question. Betty, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So as a line manager who has direct reports under you, you know very well that one of your direct reports is having maybe a romantic relationship with someone at the top. Because of that, you cannot discipline this person. So you send inquiries or something of that sort, and nothing is being done about it because the person knows that he or she is having someone at the top who is backing him or her up. What do you do as a line manager to ensure that your direct reports are in line with the policies and processes, regardless of this romance that is going on?
Okay, so under those circumstances, then you are in a toxic work environment. The toxic work environment is an environment that condones wrongdoing, that condones illegal acts, that condones acts that are not acceptable at law. And harassment, okay, so it won't be harassment, but it would be two consensual adults that would be adversely impacting the workplace. So then you are in a toxic environment that does not protect, other people from some of these things and condones it. Under those circumstances, then you do not belong there. So you need to then quicken your actions to get somewhere else that supports, what you believe in. If you are in an environment that does not support what you believe in, you need to move. Unfortunately, I can assure you that these things are in a lot, if not all, a lot of organizations. Every organization you go, you see because of the unfortunate moral decadence that we are experiencing in our workplaces today. So what I can say is, to find a way as a line manager to get the best out of your employee without delving too much into whatever she's involved with people at the top. However, you can use your people skills to get the best. So you treat the person as a difficult employee and find ways of working and getting the best out of that person, knowing very well that that person may not be in your department forever. Because when you decide to take some of these things on head on, you suffer career crashes, which normally hamper your career growth. And sometimes you can be victimized in ways that normally you do not deserve, just because you went to fight. It's 6 o'clock. You went to fight a battle that you cannot win. Some of those battles, you cannot win them. So you need to use your people skills and be wiser to be able to get the best out of this employee you are talking about. If you have the opportunity and you are in a job that can easily allow you to move into another job, make sure that you move so that you leave the toxic environment, because then you cannot grow in this kind of environment that condones all of these things. It's very common in our workplaces, and we need to learn to work around them. It's unfortunate, but this is the truth that we have to face. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Senor. Thank you it's been very insightful and very educative, and we are very, very grateful to you for making time both on Insta and Zoom. You've been very, very helpful. Thank you so much. So, God willing, we'll meet again. But Senor, before we leave, your final words.
Okay, so I've said this severally, and I'm receiving some text messages from friends, teasing me about the issue of love is nice, love is sweet, and so on. It's the truth. Okay, love is very, very beautiful. Okay, and everybody should be given an opportunity to love, except that we just have to love within the right context. Now, when we decide to do things in the workplace, okay, people who are professional and are in a relationship in the workplace normally would hardly even show it, because in the workplace they focus more on work. So if we find ourselves in an environment where this happens to us and it is something that is allowed, we need to still, knowing that it's a conflict of interest, we need to still uphold our jobs within working hours above whatever it is that we want to do with our boyfriends or girlfriends or our lovers in the workplace. Let's also know that, security people like us would always have hidden cameras in a corporate environment because we want to catch people who do obnoxious things. Then we will go and chance on you, your pants down, doing this when we really didn't want to catch you. And it will become a problem, for you. So never think that you are alone in the workplace. The workplace is a private, public environment. It is private, but it is a public. It has its publics. Yeah. So eyes may be watching. So at work, avoid doing all those hugging, touching, kissing, necking, sex, and, go to the washroom and do something, or they go to the archives and they go and do something. They lock the office door and do things. I mean, it's all not necessary. Okay. So what I can leave with you is that by all means, fall in love, but fall in love in the right context, and avoid getting yourself into embarrassing situations that can cost you your career, because you may never be able to recover. And that is a risk you cannot gamble with. Thank you, everybody.
You cannot sacrifice your career on the altar of love. You can always get love, and love is a choice, but it's very difficult to get a new job. So keep this at the back of your mind and make sure that you work so hard to advance in your career. Thank you so much for coming. All the best